Inspired by sound.
Hello, how are you? This is a tape, and what you're about to hear is a bit of a talk about tapes. I used tapes as a kid, because I'm old, and stale, and ugly, and 35. But a lot of you maybe haven't used tapes, and if you have, maybe you didn't use them like I used them. Normal people probably just listened to stuff on them. Me, I recorded stuff on them, because that's who I was. From a young age, I remember having all kinds of different tape recorders and doing all sorts of mad things with them. I'm going to talk to you about that now. And then when we come back, to this tape recording anyway, there'll be some music. And talk about that too. Bye! So let me first disclaim this video by saying this is the hardest Inspired by Sound video I've ever recorded. I'm recording it alone, I'm totally blind if you didn't know that already, and I'm actually holding the camera so that you can see this tape machine. Because my normal position would be over here to the keyboard, which is here. But we're not talking about keys today. We're talking about Inspired by Sound in terms of old tapes. I recently resurrected my tape deck because my wife bought me one a few years ago for my birthday, and I love this deck. It's a Yamaha KX530, and I think about here is where the writing is if anyone wants to screen cap that now and see that. And I like this deck a lot. It does Dolby B and C. I had a deck previously that was a Sony TCK deck that did Dolby S as well, but it died and had a belt issue. This has been my favorite deck of all the decks I've ever had, and I wanted to resurrect it. So I went on Amazon recently and I bought a Behringer UCA 202 sound card, which is RCA in and out. I've hooked it up to my mixer, and what you just heard was a bit of a recording I made last night in preparation for today's Inspired by Sound video. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is music, and since I recorded it last night, I actually don't remember what I said on the tape, so I don't want to say too much about it, but I will come back to that in a minute. I'll let my older self do the talking. I also like to dedicate this video to my lovely 6-year-old daughter Alice, who is 6 today. She may never have to use a tape in her life, but if she chooses to, well, Daddy's got lots of them. Let's listen to some music now. We'll talk about it more afterwards. So I mentioned earlier that I like to record stuff onto tapes. This tape deck supports 3 modes: normal mode, Dolby B mode, and Dolby C mode. Now in this demonstration I'm going to show you what these 3 sound like. And the reason I'm going to show you them is because tape is noisy, as you've probably gathered by now. In a car, that's quite okay. And in your home back in the day, this was also quite okay, but times change and people expect better quality from things. Now this isn't, of course, the most expensive tape deck you can buy, never was and never will be, but it is still a reasonable deck. But to compensate for this loud noise in recordings, we have these 3 modes. So you're going to hear the same piece of music 4 times, but 3 at the moment. The last time will be the normal recording off of a tape. So at first, normal recording of this piece of music, and you'll notice that the music is rather gappy, and that's on purpose so that you can hear the noise between the recordings. Let's go. That was the first recording. Now, it is necessary to put this machine into Dolby B. My voice is now being recorded in Dolby B, and the music will be recorded equally in Dolby B. Let's run that track again. And now, finally, Dolby C. My voice is now being recorded in Dolby C, and it's time to hear this track for the last time, sort of. You'll hear it again later, but don't worry about that too much. Are you ready? Here we go. Remaining in Dolby C then, at least temporarily, what you should have noticed is that the music, supposedly, or at least in theory, got better and better, and the noise reduced as we changed the modes. Dolby B was probably the first version of Dolby that was. I haven't done any research on this, by the way, so I'm just talking out of my, well, hat, if you will. But the idea behind it is that Dolby was meant to improve the sound quality of the audio. And it usually does that quite okay. If you were to play back this Dolby C recording, it would sound, without Dolby on at all, it would sound rather horrible and compressed and not very nice. Dolby B played back without Dolby on sounds just about hearable and listenable. In a car, actually, some of those artifacts of compression can push through and sound decent if you've got the windows down and you're going down the motorway at high speed. There are other Dolby modes, including Dolby S, but this tape deck does not support Dolby S. Now, that's the end of this tape portion. Back to the main video. So there we have it, Dolby B and C, and normal mode. And I think that the audio gets better, the better the better the mode, if you will, or the difference between B and C is quite noticeable. But with that comes a caveat in that you have to push the recording harder. So the difference between normal and B and C is that normally you can have the recording input at a decent level, and if you oversaturate it, it's going to clip and do bad things. Well, it doesn't really clip on a tape, does it? It's sort of an unusual sound. B, you'd have to push that harder, and I didn't. I left it at the same volume each time. But if I was to re-record something in Dolby C, knowing that now, and having shown you that, I might push the input higher. Now, the trouble, of course, is that with a tape deck, you mostly, I would think, need to be able to see to calibrate this right. And I don't know that my input was in the realm of decent when I was recording. And without getting sighted assistance, I would never know that. I can guess at it, and I think it was probably quite a bit lower than it could have been for a Dolby C recording. But it wasn't terrible. There are parts of that track, if you got familiar with it as I did, that the tambourine portion, where it's quite gappy, was almost non-existent in the Dolby C recording because it sounds like the material has been gated out. So a gate, and we'll use a manual example for this, would be anytime the audio goes quiet, I disappear entirely. This makes for very nasty audio in a lot of cases. And that's kind of what Dolby C used to do, and Dolby S was even worse than that, or different than that. I can't say worse. The sound of Dolby S, when done right, is tremendous, but you just have to find the right deck that supports it. Now, none of mine do. I did have one that did it, as I said earlier, but this doesn't. So, with that in mind, now you've heard the 3 versions on tape. You're going to hear it one more time, this here track, and then we're going to do a bit of rewinding and fast forwarding and show you what this sounds like. So, here's this track, not on tape anymore, but the natural recording played from a lossless audio file. It's called Chilling and Taking It Slow, and I made it, a few months ago. So I'm going to turn my mic down, and I'm going to press play. And by the way, this video is really hard because I'm doing everything one-handed. So I have to keep swapping the phone over from one hand to another hand to make this work nicely. So please, if you hate the video quality, blame me. It's entirely my fault. I chose to film it alone without help as a challenge to myself. So here's the track. So as you can hear in that track, it's incredibly clean, and that's because it was a digital recording from Logic Pro X, not on a tape. I just played that back through my existing stereo setup and mixer and so on. So of course it has very few artifacts, if any. You'll have YouTube artifacts to contend with, but I can't help you there. Now this tape deck is pretty special. It has 2 modes for rewinding and fast forwarding, well technically 3. One of them is a cue and review mode with these buttons, hopefully if you can see here. There's a button here and a button here, which is above the transport controls, And this actually puts the tape head in play, but not touching the tape entirely. And if you listen carefully, if I turn my mic down, you should actually hear the music coming through the tape. And then also the rewind mode equally. And the point of this is so that you can, it will stop when it finds the necessary part. There we go. But it doesn't work on all tapes. I don't know if you heard that, but there was a change in tonality there as the recording got beyond music. I recorded music from my Amazon device, from Groove Salad, just for something to put on this tape to test it out. Let me go forward again. I'll turn up the tape machine. Did you hear that changeover to music? Now the tape machine, maybe if there was a larger gap in the recording or something more noticeable, it would have actually stopped there, rewound and gone to that point and begun playing from that point. But I think the gap wasn't enough for it to detect it, so it didn't bother. It's still a fun thing though. Now, the other two modes are normal rewind, which I'll fast forward as I'm now doing, and a faster fast forward by holding that button down like that. Now it's ploughing through this tape, and I don't know if you can see the screen of the tape machine here, but it's going at a high rate of speed. Stop, normal rewind, and let's go high speed rewind. And no other deck that I've ever had did this. It's a nice feature, it's a welcome feature, and I quite enjoy it. Now I think about here, yeah, there's one of the demos that I found. I managed to get right back to it. Now, I wanted to play you this track, the Dolby C version, without any Dolby on at all. So I need to listen to the tape to find out exactly where we are, so we can do that. My spoken word in a minute should come up and inform me. That actually does sound like the C version, doesn't it? Because the B and C switches are actually on at the moment. So I might remaining in Dolby C then. Yeah, that was the end of the Dolby C patch. So let me go back a bit. Sorry to put this machine into Dolby B. Now, speaking of that, there's the audio from a B recording played back in C, and it is also nasty, and it has a lot of this gating artifacts in it. So actually, I'm going to use this as an example as well. You've got to love live on-the-fly videos. That's the end of the B audio, and it sounds foul like this. It's lost everything. That was the first recording. Oh no, that was the end of the first. Now, my bad. It is necessary to put this machine into Dolby B. My voice is now being recorded in Dolby B, and the music will be recorded equally in Dolby B. Now, for this recording, this part of the video, I'm going to switch off all the Dolby settings. Now, these three switches are, as far as I remember, HX Pro, Dolby B, and Dolby C. Now, you can't turn on C without B being pushed in anyway, so it doesn't matter if I turn C off. I'll leave it on. I'll just push out the B switch. Now C is off, and that means there's no Dolby on at all. Sorry, B is off, and there's no Dolby on at all, even though the C switch is pushed in. Can you see that? I don't know. Just pretend you can. And now I'll hit play, and we'll hear these two recordings again, the B recording played back without Dolby on at all, and the C recording played back without Dolby on at all, and it's horrible sounding. You won't like it. Be warned. Let's run that track again. And now, finally, Dolby C. My voice is now being recorded in Dolby C, and it's time to hear this track for the last time, sort of. You'll hear it again later, but don't worry about that too much. Are you ready? Here we go. That's pretty nasty stuff, I would say. So there we are, a bit of an overview, not a review, but a bit of an overview of the Yamaha KX530 tape deck that I like a lot. I hope you enjoyed this little sort of, whatever it is called, overview if you will, and that you maybe find yourself interested in tape a little bit as well. This was something I used a great deal throughout my childhood to record stuff off the radio and also home recordings. And tapes contain a history, unlike an SD card, where you can't have one file on top of another file. You don't always know what you're going to get on a tape. A tape contains sort of strata, history. Because this tape has its tabs in, which means I can hit record at the moment. I won't do it because it might loop back into itself in a bad way. Or actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. If I turn this down, yeah, there we go. I can now show you what'll happen when I go into record mode. You won't hear it, but you'll see it on the meter, I hope. So there we are. It's picking up from an input and is ready to record. So with that in mind, I could record over what I recorded last night, but since tape is an analog medium, there's no reason for you to ever know that that's there, or even what was under it before that. It's like a layer upon a layer, and it's fascinating to me that tapes do this. So you could be handed a box of tapes from someone, and what the label of the tape could say might be, I don't know, let's just say now 37 for an example. But if someone put tabs over the end of the recording, or over the tape media, these plastic parts, then you can record on that tape. So you could record, I don't know, something off the radio or the telly, or your child messing around, and it would have gone over the music. With an SD card, you can see what those files are immediately before you play them. Alright, they might be mislabeled, but one file, because it's not contiguous, if that makes sense, the files, it's going to be what it probably is. If I'm not making any sense, that's okay. But think of a tape sort of digging like topsoil. What is under the topsoil? You don't know until you dig. With a modern day system, there's no real surprises, is what I'm getting at. No real surprises. And I think that's kind of a shame we've lost this kind of, this feeling and this understanding of life. What it is to have this kind of recording medium. It's gone. I mean, minidisc was kind of a bit like that, but not really, because you could see when a recording was going to end. With a tape, you just hear that click, and it's on or it's not on. So there we are. A bit of an interesting look at tape and so on and so forth. So I hope you like this video. Please like, subscribe and share. And thank you if you put up with my shoddy camera work from beginning to end. I appreciate your time and effort. Bye for now.